I found fantasy as a genre when I was in grade 8 of high school. A friend had bought the red box to D&D. I was lucky then to fall in with a larger group of friends who played, and we played RPs regularly throughout my high school years. As an offshoot of this, I voraciously read any fantasy book that I could get my hands on. During this period, there was a boom in fantasy novels. This was good and bad. It opened the doors for a lot of talented writers who had written fantasy stories but could not get them published. Now they were. The downside was that there were companies that were saturating the market. They were commissioning new stories all the time. The downside was that this mass market approach often produced subpar material. One diamond in the rough was Dungeon Volume 1, The Black Tower. And wow, was it a bit odd. I have to say that this book has not aged as well as some of the others in terms of material, but having read it again for the first time since my youth, I still found it to be a good fun romp. The story is set originally in Victorian England. Neville Folliott has gone adventuring to the wild continent of Africa in search of adventure, as one would do. And as so often happens in stories when someone goes adventuring to the wild continent of Africa, he has gone missing. So his younger brother Clive has raised some funds and sets out in search of his older brother. A brother who was a miserable twat. In both his brother's and father's eyes, Clive was a lesser man. It was a fantasy version of England. While it was set in the beginning of the story in a form of reality, the many virtues and prejudices of the period are both heightened and downplayed. His fiancée is a strong woman with strong views and heaving bosoms. His best friend is an actor with very interesting ideas about the world. If there is one immediate problem with the book, it is that it might have been a half-decent pulp adventure about adventuring in the wild continent of Africa. But within a few chapters he is transported to a fantastical new world where nothing is as it seems. If you're thinking this sounds a little like the excellent John Carter of Mars series, you would not be wrong. The dungeon is worlds within worlds. Beings taken from all over time and space have been brought here. Strange alien, World War II Japanese soldiers have all found themselves thrown into the mix for some higher being's amusement. Like everything about the book, this is a strength and weakness. The strength is it's never the same for any length of time. This means new situations, new creatures, and new places. That constant change keeps it fresh, it keeps it moving, and it never stagnates. Where it is a weakness is that it can be confusing. With a movie you have visual cues about changes. You can see it happening, and how it worked, even if you and the characters are still in the dark as to how. You may not be confused about the transition between places. The book finds these transitions just a little harder to describe. This can be added to by the simple fact that sometimes one place is very different to the next. The third positive and negative is the characters. They are somewhat stereotyped. Now, this isn't always a terrible thing. I think we get angry at the concept, but stereotypes convey a lot of information about a person very quickly. The problem shouldn't be stereotypes. It should be when they are bad, or socially or racially insensitive. In Dungeon, we have Clive Folliott, a standard hero in many ways. Not as competent as some around him, but he's determined, a natural leader, but one who doesn't want the job. Sound a bit familiar? We have Sergeant Smythe, the dependable British sergeant, the man to have at your side, loyal, strong, proud of the Empire but doesn't like oppression in any of its form upon people. Your typical, in many ways, sergeant in literature. Then there is Seedy Bombay. Now he is very much a stereotype of Indians. But having said that, in an era where TV has them as convenience store owners, good dancers, good cooks but socially bad with women, Seedy Bombay is something different. He is a mystic, in tune with his religion, which makes him the philosophical component of the party. While Folliott might ask how, Smythe might just do, it's Seedy who asks why. He is strong, dependable as a companion, brave when things go wrong, so while in some ways he doesn't feel very new as a character, he is still a very solid individual and not there for the sake of humour. User Annie is from Clive's future, but now not ours. She is the character that dates this book the most. She talks a form of street speech that is a mix of English and computer terms. From an era when DOS was the mainstay though, her language when reading it today feels very antiquated. There is also a situation with her and Clive that is just, well, it's just creepy, and they would have been much better leaving it out. Finnbog is a British bulldog, if it had evolved into a more human form. And Shriek is a giant sentient spider. She is capable of the gentlest of actions and the most horrific of actions. She is difficult to relate to as she is the most alien of the companions, both in looks and actions. The book has aged. It's not as awesome today as it was when I first read it, but it is still a great adventure. It also comes with a few pages at the back of sketches of various characters from the story, which is interesting. It's also interesting as it's at the back of the book, after you may have read it and they are showing what things looked like. Preconceived ideas would probably already be there. It's a cool idea, but maybe it should have been inside the novel when relevant. While the book may be a little tricky now to find, being 30 years old, but it's really worth a read if you can find it.